Let's circle back to one of our top stories, with the U.S. renewing calls to acquire Greenland. The White House says U.S. President Donald Trump wants to secure control of the Danish territory, citing national security concerns, and they aren't ruling out taking over through military force. For more, Dr. Troy Bouffard, director of the Center for Arctic Security and Resilience at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, joins us now. Dr. Bouffard, you've written about and worked on Arctic security for years, so why exactly is President Trump fixated on Greenland, given that the U.S. already operates there, and how should we see that in the context of the Maduro arrest and recent U.S. moves in Colombia and the region?
It's certainly concerning, of course, but I think these are separate issues, I hope understood separately, where Greenland and Denmark are longtime allies of the United States. And it is concerning. I think the importance of Greenland, since World War II, the U.S. has had a presence there, and it's mostly North American defense related, especially missile defense. But we've always had that military and defense presence in Greenland already at Thule Air Base and now Pituffik Space Force Base. And that's our primary concern, is what the capabilities of that geographic location offer in terms of North American defense for early warning, and then what will be the transition from the Cold War ballistic missile threat now to the future decades of the hypersonic cruise missile threat, which is going to require different technologies. And it's creating a situation where Greenland now is more important to us for defense purposes than ever before.
So Greenland does pose a strategic importance, and that's why reports mention that the U.S. is considering options ranging from a purchase to a compact of free association to utilizing the U.S. military. But realistically, how credible is a military seizure of Greenland, and what would be the immediate operational obstacles?
It's not very credible at all. There's no need for it. We already have a relationship with Denmark and presence in Greenland. And to modify that, maybe to adapt to current and changing threats is going to be necessary probably. But I'm 100% certain that could be achieved with the current relationships that we have already. There's no need to seize or try to capture Greenland to accomplish what has already been achieved. We have a presence, and it's taking care of our defense needs for the geographic purposes. We're going to have to change those, but it doesn't require anything as urgent or aggressive as capture. Just continue the relationships as they exist, and I'm certain they would work fine.
And if Trump's Greenland ambitions were to go through, where do Russia and China fit into U.S. thinking about Greenland and the wider Arctic?
Well, Russia would very much like this. They're always practicing the strategic policy of irredentism, which is to recover lost lands. They lost 20% of their real estate after the collapse of the Soviet Union, so they're kind of in favor of actions like this, which doesn't speak well to us. For China, they will cite that we no longer care about the rules-based order of the world and the rule of law and international law, and that certainly wouldn't help us and provide credibility for the United States towards our allies. So I think we really need to think about this a little more practically, which is kind of to understand that President Trump thinks about foreign affairs. His processes they don't follow the traditional methods. He thinks about things in business terms, strategic and tactical. And this is another one of those. And I think what we're seeing is something akin to the business term hostile takeover. But it's very difficult to see how this will work out. What is the end game for this? In business terms, this makes sense when you're competing in this way, and you don't care about allies or somewhat similar things. But in the foreign affairs world, this kind of behavior doesn't work. The business approach to everything, especially on the more aggressive side, is very counterproductive.
Exactly. With Trump deciding to take the untraditional route, what is the biggest security risk if the U.S. presses for harder control over Greenland, especially, as you mentioned, for allies like NATO? How would that affect NATO cohesion, per se?
And I think a recent statement put it perfectly that this could be the end of NATO if this happens to that extreme scenario. And it's a perfect statement in my understanding because I think it states something that's attention getting, very practical, and also will kind of indicate what the circumstances could be for such behaviors, but without going and stooping to the level of the brash rhetoric we hear otherwise. So I think Denmark in Europe and Greenland have done very well to position themselves and be very clear about how they feel about this. And the security risks would be if an extreme scenario does happen, we're looking at NATO and Western allies and forces becoming less stable, less stronger, less cohesive, which works very much in favor of our adversaries. And they would love to see this. And the other security concerns too become like the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. That's so important for the North Atlantic. And allied defense becomes less stable and very questionable. And there's uncertainty, all of which is unnecessary.
So then, for policymakers in NATO and Europe watching this now, what immediate steps should be taken to deter escalation and protect alliance unity?
Well, I think the current messaging from Denmark and Greenland needs to continue as is. It's been quite effective, very clear. And I think Europe and other Western nations should help strengthen and support that and make it very clear to the United States that such extreme measures will result in circumstances that'll be unfavorable to the United States and have repercussions around the world that are just unnecessary.
And one last question, based on how the geopolitics have been rolling out for the past couple of weeks and past couple of days in the new year, what should countries like Denmark and Greenland themselves be doing right now to manage this type of pressure from the Trump administration whilst protecting their interests?
Yeah. It really does bring an unnecessary conflict and problems to, Denmark, who's part of Europe right now, going through amazing growing pains in terms of its own security. European security is going through quite a steep learning curve in terms of not having the United States there as a primary leader and supporter anymore, because we've had to shift towards Asia more. And this is causing Europe quite a lot of stress in and of itself, and they really don't need this. So I think as part of the growing pains, they're going to have to learn how to stand up to other nations, allied and otherwise. And it's unfortunate for the United States to take this path, especially with Denmark, our oldest ally in history, and have to add to the problems. And especially when we already have achieved what we want for national security purposes in Greenland. It can be strengthened easily with just continued normal processes and relationships. So this just makes Europe probably more weary and lacking trust in the United States as an ally and supporter.
All right. Well, we appreciate all those insights. That was Dr. Troy Buffard, director of the Center for Arctic Security and Resilience at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.